What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Michigan Recruiting Report. This is our special edition official visit preview show. I'm EJ Hall, and alongside me is my co-host, Ethan McDowell. Michigan heating up on the recruiting trail. Ethan, are you excited?
Recruiting is fun again, EJ. We're so back. This weekend's just going to be even better. I have high hopes for Michigan's chances overall with where things are headed this cycle.
Yeah, quite a few commit candidates this weekend, and obviously some major targets. It is Savion Hyder week, so a lot to talk about on the show. Before we do, if you're not locked into the Wolverine.com, now is the time to do so. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. Get exclusive insider information on everything Michigan recruiting, especially coming out of these key official visits. Plus, get the latest on the house settlement, the team as we approach football season, transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community with thousands and thousands of users. So again, use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine. And if you haven't yet, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. All right, let's go ahead and dive into today's show. And, we normally start off with we go in order of positions. I guess we start off quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. So let's make the audience wait a little while before we get into Savion Hyder. Let's let it marinate a little bit. Let's go ahead and actually start off on the defensive side of the ball. Tell me a little bit about Ben Boulware, massive 300-pound defensive lineman coming in this weekend. A sneaky pick for a guy that Michigan could have the advantage for. The Wolverines have the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. Just tell me a little bit about where you think the Wolverines stand, Ethan.
Yeah, I've been following him as a prospect for a while. Just being before this job, I was covering recruiting in North Carolina, and he's someone who emerged onto the scene out of a smaller school in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and he was a 6'5", 300-pound nose tackle prospect. The type of prospect that, Georgia, South Carolina, those programs in that region are always excited about it to get out of the Carolinas. But Michigan has worked its way into contention for Ben after a spring visit that went really, really well. Defensive line coach Lou Esposito has done a good job here. Assistant defensive line coach David Denham has done a really good job here. Went by his school this spring. And right now, Michigan is his only known official visit on his schedule. To our knowledge, he had one locked in for USC. It's our understanding that's no longer happening as of right now. So right now, it's Michigan is the only official visit I know of on his schedule for this weekend. And then he's planning on taking one to South Carolina in the fall. So very early in his recruiting process, but Michigan's clearly a big contender in his recruitment.
Not only did he have his USC visit canceled, I exchanged messages with our USC insider, Scott Schrader, and he said USC is no longer a factor at all. So, like Ethan said, it'll be interesting to see if he waits it out, because if, he decides, hey, I just want to get it over with this summer, the door's wide open for Michigan if they're the only school that's going to host him for an official visit. So very, very interesting situation there. Another one that is kind of similar, I guess, in terms of just it being an interesting situation where if Michigan really pushes, maybe they can come away with a commitment. That's NASCAR McCoy, 4-star defensive back out of Georgia. And Ethan, you went out and had a chance to spend some time with him. And he was a guy who was really highly touted early on. Then his stock kind of dropped a little bit. And I even talked to our national analyst, Chad Simmons, earlier today for something on the Wolverine. And when we were talking about McCoy, and Chad is very plugged in Georgia, he's based in Georgia, he said it's hard to get a grasp of who's really pushing for McCoy. So what can you tell us about NASCAR?
Yeah, like he'll tell you himself. He told me when I went down there to Georgia, he was like, I didn't have that good of a junior season. And I think maybe the interest kind of reflected that early this year. But then he said teams came by in the spring. They saw how much he had improved, the step forward he took, and things heated back up for him. And that included a push from Michigan. Michigan got him on campus. The trip went really well. His family loved Ann Arbor. In fact, his mom told NASCAR that she had a dream about him picking Michigan. So I think Michigan has worked its way into genuine contention, like you said, if they decide to push. The safety board, like there's some big names on it right now that Michigan stands in a pretty good spot for. So I don't have a great feel for where NASCAR stands on the board right now, but he definitely likes Michigan alongside schools like, Ole Miss, Miami, and Ohio State. It's tough to get, like you said, a good read on which of those programs are like really, really pushing. But if Michigan does this weekend, I think they'll have a shot.
I do think it's interesting that Michigan has built some momentum with Donovan Webb, and if they close on Webb, I think that basically takes McCoy's spot because it looks like they're kind of similar. But if for whatever reason Michigan doesn't land Donovan Webb, if he has a great trip to Notre Dame or he decides to stay a little closer to home, then maybe that could open the door there for McCoy. So that one's an interesting situation. Boulware is an interesting situation. And Kenneth Goodwin is a lot of interesting situations this weekend, is another recruit who, like McCoy, was ranked really high early on. He was a prospect that was really highly touted. I think at one point he was definitely like in the top 200 on the industry. So his rankings have fallen off a little bit. Now, Georgia was thought to be the leader here, but the Bulldogs are not pushing. He canceled his official visit there. I exchanged messages with Justin Hopkins, our Oregon insider, and it doesn't seem like Oregon's going all in for him, even though he does have an OV scheduled there for the following weekend. There are a few other linebackers that seem to be higher on Oregon's board. And so, what are you really left with at this point for competition for Michigan? He did make an official visit out to SMU. There are a couple of other programs still involved in this one, but I think if Michigan makes a big push this weekend, there are other highly touted linebackers that just visited, like Nick Abrams or Braden Rouse. But I think this linebacker class is going to have at least 3 in it. So maybe they take a shot on Kenneth Goodwin. And I say take a shot, but Michigan has been on him from the very start. Yeah. He's been to campus. So, they still really like him despite the rankings drop. And I think along with the rankings drop, he's just been to so many different high schools. He started his high school career in Nevada, then moved out to California, and then transferred within the state of California. So like I said, another really interesting recruitment, but definitely one where Michigan can win out. And anything you want to add on Goodwin, Ethan?
Yeah, Brian Jean Mary went out to California in May during that 1-week stretch that Michigan was able to get out and see recruits. I think that's a pretty strong indicator. There wasn't much time for Michigan just to go out and see recruits just to see him. If they were going out to see Kenneth, I think that's an indication that they are genuinely interested in him.
He's not the only linebacker coming in. DQ Forkba, riser in the rankings, was basically unranked when Michigan was first on him. He made an unofficial visit last year. And even talking to him after that unofficial visit, it didn't seem like his interest was super high and he was just completely under the radar. And both of those things have changed. His interest has really increased in Michigan. He was on campus this spring and loved his time in Ann Arbor. And also his rankings have gone up. He's not, the super elite level linebacker, but he is a 4-star on the industry ranking. And I think he put together some really good testing times at IMG Academy's Pro Day. He recently transferred there from the state of Georgia, so he'll be playing up in competition. So it'll be really interesting to watch him as a senior. I think schools like Florida and Florida State, which had him on campus this weekend, have really built up some buzz. So it'll be important for Michigan to regain some momentum. At one point, I had Forkba in my mock class, and I still feel like he can end up in Michigan's class, but a lot will depend on how things go this weekend. Another interesting connection Michigan went into IMG Academy last year. They landed Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, their top linebacker target. Forkba shares the same NIL agent as Owusu-Boateng, Cliff Hill. So I think, with Michigan starting to talk about rev share and NIL and things of that nature, I think Sean McGee's working relationship with Cliff Hill could really help Michigan this weekend in the Forkba recruitment. So he's just another intriguing linebacker on that board where, like I said, you could see them take 3 prospects. Anything you want to add on Forkba?
Yeah, if you're taking 3 linebackers, why not take a chance on a rising 3-star with great testing numbers who could blow up his senior year? He's going to be going against the best of the best at IMG. If he has a good season, he's going to jump up those rankings. And if Michigan likes him, go try to get him. And but they're going to have to fight off those in-state Florida schools to try and win that one.
Now, Ethan, you have been very busy covering recruits in Georgia, and there's yet another linebacker coming in, and that is Anthony Davis. What's the latest?
So I've only gotten to talk to Anthony once. It was at the event we were both at in February, EJ, at the Sevens in Atlanta. And when I talked to him then, Michigan was kind of creeping back onto the radar. Coach John Mary had just gone and seen him. That conversation went really well, and Michigan had worked its way back into the mix. He keeps his recruitment very quiet. He doesn't talk a ton, but he's going to Michigan this weekend, and we're going to see if Michigan can make a jump. Right now, I think he's going to end up in the SEC. I'm looking at, Auburn, Alabama, and Ole Miss for him right now. But we'll see if Michigan can make a move. They did, I think, earlier this year, and but right now I'd probably project him to the SEC. Out of the linebackers visiting and really the linebacker board overall, I think I feel the least confident in him.
All right, let's talk about some priorities in the secondary. We mentioned McCoy earlier coming in, but there's some guys that Michigan would definitely take that they're trending up for. One of them is Andre Clark, 4-star defensive back out of Richmond, Virginia. Obviously, I've had a chance to see Andre many times. I've been out to Hermitage to see him at a game. I've seen him practice. I've visited him at his school. I've spent time with his father. The Clark family, they love Michigan. They love Lamar Morgan. I think Morgan's made a huge impression on Clark. He visited him in the winter, had an in-home visit that went extremely well. Clark's been to campus in the past, obviously. I think he feels comfortable at Michigan. He camped there last summer, earned an offer on the spot, returned this spring, and had a really good visit. So I think Kentucky is a school that is high on his list. SMU is a school that is high on his list as well. But Michigan is a superior program. I mean, Michigan is obviously the better school when you're talking about Kentucky or SMU, the better football program. So I think that, if everything goes the way it should go this weekend, there's a good chance Michigan can come away with Andre Clark. And by the way, he's listed as a safety. Michigan recruiting him more as a corner. He's about 6 foot, 165 pounds. But I think it's just a versatile piece that you can play in multiple spots as well. So yes, Michigan is shooting its shot with Kari Adams and Devon Benjamin, but I think Andre Clark would be a really quality addition, especially since Michigan's current cornerback, Brody Jennings, is continuing to make visits and could end up flipping out of the class. You don't want to end up with, no corners here. So I think Andre would be a really good take. And speaking of Brody, landing Andre could actually help keep Brody in the class. The two are 7-on-7 teammates with South Florida Express, on the club scene. So that's definitely a note worth watching as well. Ethan, anything you want to add on Andre?
I think he's the number one guy I have on potential commit watch this weekend. It just seems like things are moving in the right direction. You've reported that, I think Andre said Michigan's probably number one for him. And then his dad said Michigan is number one for them. So it just seems like things are in a good spot there, and love Andre's length at corner in particular. I think he'd be a good match for that spot.
So another prospect that I think could be on commit watch here is Jordan Deck. He was supposed to make his official visit to Michigan on May 30th. That did not happen. He rescheduled for June 13th, which I think works out a little better because had he made it in on May 30th, obviously that's a very early official visit. Baylor is the biggest threat to Michigan right now, and they're set to get an OV on June 20th. So I think the closer the visit to Baylor, the better. And maybe you can convince him to not even take the Baylor visit. So I don't think distance is a huge factor for Deck. He also really liked Penn State, but it seems like the Nittany Lions have kind of filled up on the back end. So that's really left it between Michigan and Baylor. And like I said, I think Baylor has the local advantage, but at the same time, Michigan, a far superior program. Jordan Deck knows there's a need in the secondary for a taller, longer safety. Remember, Michigan tried to land one last cycle and was unsuccessful. So it's a big priority to get a taller, longer safety this recruiting cycle. I think Jordan Deck really fits what Michigan's looking for. He also fits from just a culture perspective. I think that, things are really trending in the right direction for Michigan and Jordan Deck. It'll all just kind of depend on how things go this weekend. And he's not the only big time safety coming in from the state of Texas. You also have Chase Calicut, who is one of my personal favorites as well. I'd love to see a class of Deck and Calicut, but I think it's more likely they end up with one. Texas is the leader here. They are doing everything they can to land him in terms of not just recruiting him hard, but also taking care of the business side of recruiting. I think Michigan needs to have a good business discussion with him. But talking to Calicut's mother, Victoria, who is super awesome, they do value more things than just NIL. I mean, the relationship with Lamar Morgan is huge. The relationship they built with Andrew Marsh and his family, who's a fellow Houston area native, is definitely playing a role. The opportunity to get out of Texas and see something new and play for a team known for hard-nosed football on the defensive side of the ball is certainly appealing. So I know Michigan hasn't had the buzz a lot with Calicut lately, as signs still point to Texas, but maybe Michigan can get some momentum this weekend and make things a lot more interesting with Calicut. So he hasn't been to campus here in a little while, so I think this official visit can definitely help turn the tides. Now, another prospect in the secondary that I feel like we don't talk about as much, but Ethan, you had a chance to go all the way out to Utah to see him, and that's Cassie Moa. What can you tell us about Moa?
Yeah, super intriguing two-way guy. He has offers for receiver and DB. Michigan likes him at nickel. And I think he's a great fit for that. Long, athletic. I saw him at an Under Armour camp, and he only worked at receiver, so I didn't get to see any DB reps. But I liked what I saw out of him at receiver. And it's clear Michigan really likes him. He's another guy the staff went out to Utah and saw him in May. Clear he's a priority. Right now, there's just not a lot of buzz around which way he's leaning in his recruitment. When I talked to him, he told me I believe Michigan was in his top 3. But I think that while we're not talking a lot about him, I think Michigan has as good of a shot as anyone in his recruitment, honestly. The spring visit went really well, and now they just have to capitalize on this OV and beat out teams like Utah and Washington. And he has an OV to Tennessee next week, but I would maybe put them a little further back than those other West Coast schools.
Moa is super interesting. His recruitment's interesting because, like you said, he's super quiet. He's made an official visit to Michigan State, where his brother actually transferred into. So that's an interesting connection. And then you have some schools out west like Utah, which is pushing to keep him home. And then Washington, I think, has offered him on both sides of the ball. So really, really intriguing recruitment, and then really intriguing player. Like Ethan said, he saw only wide receiver work. I actually saw him at OT7 in Dallas, and I got to see him play both ways. And I like him as a wide receiver too. I think he could be a complement in the wide receiver room at Michigan, but I did like him more as a DB. So if you liked him a lot as a receiver, I think you'd like him even more as a DB. But yeah, just one to really, really keep an eye on this weekend. Let's get into some of the major big names here. John Turntine, top 100 offensive lineman out of the great state of Texas, is coming in this weekend. Considered a heavy Texas lean on the On3 recruiting prediction machine, I have said for several months that I think John Turntine could be this year's Ty Haywood. They're both from Dallas-Fort Worth. They both, were considered heavy leans to their childhood favorite school. Obviously, Haywood committed to Alabama, Turntine a heavy lean to Texas. They are both guys that were personally identified by Sharon Moore and have received in-person visits from Sharon Moore, where Sharon Moore is really taking control of that recruitment. They are both guys that Michigan is willing to invest in. And obviously they already did with Haywood and got him enrolled. I think they are willing to do a lot for John Turntine when it comes to the business side. Now, I know a lot of you are, probably thinking in your head, what about Felix Ojo? He's also trending to Texas. I had a good discussion with Eric Nolan, who is our Texas recruiting insider. It was, I've known Eric for a decade now. And he told me, he thinks that Texas leads for both, which, I think, that's the general consensus. But will Texas have enough means to go all in for Ojo and Turntine? Or will Ojo take up a lot of what they are putting on the table, which would then open the door for Michigan and Turntine? And I think that's a very likely situation. I feel like Michigan did a great job with Ojo. He had a great time in Ann Arbor. Michigan improved its stock. Michigan's going to be competitive on the NIL side. But I think they're both guys that you have to invest a lot in. And I am not sure that Texas gets both. I really think Michigan's the dark horse here. I think, if you were to ask me today, I think Ojo lands at Texas, and I could very well see Turntine at Michigan. So, I know Texas gets the last visit, but, with the settlement having passed, I think it's go time for Michigan, and Turntine's that Ty Haywood guy that Sharon Moore really wants. And let's say Turntine does pick Texas this summer, like Haywood picked Alabama last year. I think this is one they keep working on throughout the cycle. Ethan, anything you want to add on Haywood? On Turntine. See, I'm already calling him Ty Haywood.
Turntine's awesome. Like, if they do find a way to get him out of Texas, then that is going to be one of the biggest wins of the recruiting cycle. Absolutely, regardless of who else they get, because his highlight film is so fun to watch, man. Like, you look at his measurables and you're like, oh, he's not the biggest offensive lineman in the world, but you turn on his tape, man, and it's really fun. I think he would be a fantastic addition, whether he ends up playing guard or tackle at the next level. I think he's going to be a really good player, and it's interesting how there could be some O-line dominoes, because Texas is also a top contender for Malachi Lee on their tackle board too. So he's another guy that there's a lot of overlap with these guys. It's going to be interesting to see how it all works out.
Definitely. So let's go ahead and talk about another premier target, and that is wide receiver Travis Johnson. On 300 prospect, has been to campus multiple times, ready to get back for his official visit. And, if you were to ask me today where I think Travis is leaning to, I'd probably go with Michigan. I do think Michigan's a great fit for him. I think that from a character standpoint, from a playing standpoint, I think he checks a lot of boxes for what Michigan is looking for. I think they are willing to invest in him on the business side as well. His agent, Latish Kinsler, has a great working relationship with Michigan general manager Sean McGee. I don't think the business side will be an issue with Travis. I think where Michigan can win with Travis is just continuing to sell Bryce Underwood. Bryce had a chance to spend some time with Travis on his recent visit. And, Travis is very impressed by him. Travis has said on the record that Bryce landing at Michigan is helping him. He can see the vision. He had a chance to see a spring practice. He knows what Bryce is capable of, the type of arm talent he has, and just spending more time with Chip Lindsey as well, just getting a better view of the balance he plans to bring to Michigan's offense. But, Travis, I think can be, when you look at Travis, man, I think he can be an immediate impact player at Michigan. He's that big bodied wide receiver, but he's super athletic. I had a chance to see him play basketball in the winter. He can jump out of the gym. He's not necessarily a straight line, crazy track time burner, but he can certainly stretch the field. And what's really impressive about Travis, and something I say about him all the time, is he runs routes like a small guy. He can really sink his hips, get in and out of breaks, which is something taller receivers usually struggle at this point. It's not really like that with Travis. He's a really smooth operator. So I think Michigan will treat him like a day one difference maker. I think they value him as a day one difference maker. I think Michigan can win this recruitment. I really do. I think Travis is a great fit. Like I said earlier, a great culture fit. His mother, Tiffany, has been one of my favorite parents to interact with throughout this process. So, Penn State is there. South Carolina is there. Georgia's hosted him for an OV. But I like where Michigan stands heading into this official visit. One thing to note is I did talk to, like I said earlier, Chad Simmons, our national analyst. He said that it doesn't seem like things are progressing with Georgia. And I would definitely give Michigan the advantage over Penn State, even after Penn State's OV. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of optimism coming out of Happy Valley. So door wide open here for Travis. Ethan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just with the way Penn State recruits the DMV, I was keeping a close eye on that visit, like I'm sure you were too, man. And it just doesn't seem like there was that much positive Penn State buzz around his recruitment coming out of that trip. And that's huge. I think that, Michigan was in a good spot going into OV season. A couple visits later, they're still in a good spot. So it's all about maximizing this visit and continuing that good momentum. Again, it seems like they already have a good business relationship, and he's clearly the guy at outside receiver. They're putting a lot into this recruitment. I bet he's going to feel that way this weekend, and they're going to let him know that he is the number one option and, the future receiver for Bryce Underwood. And I think that'll give Michigan a good shot.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Calvin Russell, who, would probably be more of a straight NIL recruitment, it's Travis Johnson. He's the guy. So last one. But before we get into that, Ethan, I must say I'm disappointed in you as a current Virginia native a current Virginia resident, because you are a Virginia native and you made a horrendous geography mistake that'll get the people from Virginia riled up.
Oh, calling it
the DMV.
Yeah.
You can't do that, man. This is the 757. Stop this. Very disappointing. Not the DMV. 757, completely separate from the DMV. So just wanted to throw that out there, Ethan. Bad geography.
No, you're right. I'm sure I'll hear it in the comments. I understand.
I don't think Savion Hyder counts as a DMV guy either. He's out in the boondocks, man. Straight up in the mountains. Savion Hyder out of Louisa County in Mineral, Virginia, a town of a few hundred. He's a small town kid, and I think we've made a lot of the business side of this recruitment, right? Obviously, NIL is going to be a factor here. But I think some things where Michigan can win this recruitment is just making Savion feel at home. Obviously, Tennessee is also making a big run from an NIL perspective. And what they can offer is, it's drivable from his hometown. Knoxville is also, kind of a mountain town, it's a smaller community vibe. I think Michigan needs to really make him feel like a fit in Ann Arbor, getting him around the town, getting him around the people, getting him in the running back room. I think guys like Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes can really tell their stories about how they ended up at Michigan, why they wanted to play for Tony Alford. I think Justice Haynes in particular, I know, one of Hyder's mentors has a lot of respect for Justice Haynes. And, Hyder's obviously very high on Georgia as well. They're a finalist. So Haynes can talk about his path from Georgia to transferring to Michigan because he wanted to play for Tony Alford. And then that relationship, I think Tony Alford can be, if Hyder goes further from home, which Michigan obviously, again, is further than Tennessee, I think that Tony Alford can be kind of that second father figure. He's a guy that Hyder's own father, Rod, really, really respects. So I think that there are a lot of other factors than just the business side. I think Michigan and Tennessee, they're going to put their best foot forward there. And if the business side is similar, then I think there are some other factors that can win Michigan this recruiting battle. And it's not just going to be the straight up NIL. I think Savion's just a very, very unique kid, just doesn't love the process. He'd like to get it over with, and he just wants to find his home. I do think on the business side, obviously we have to talk about that. His agent, Adam McCann, has a great working relationship with Sean McGee, who is, putting together Michigan's plan of attack for recruiting and NIL and rev share and all that good stuff. And McGee and McCann, I think, have a great bond, great connection. I think that will help Michigan in this recruitment. McCann has a longstanding relationship with Tony Alford as well. So even though Hyder hasn't been back to Michigan this calendar year and he's been to Tennessee a couple of times, you have to remember Tennessee had a new running backs coach. So that was a reason he went out there. It's the school that's closest to him. So again, he was able to drive there. Obviously, they're investing a lot, but I think Michigan is still a school to beat for Savion Hyder. I don't know if I'd say they're the school to beat. A lot will depend on this official visit, the Tennessee official visit. But what I can say about Savion is that he's a great kid, man. He's a great culture fit. He would be a day one starter. Obviously they have a great running back room, but he would be a day one impact player at Michigan, whether that's a starter or a guy who splits carries. He's getting on the field as a freshman and being extremely productive. They always like to refer to Savion as him. He is him. He's the guy. He can not only just run between the tackles and be a power back, he has great speed. I mean, he had really impressive track times as an underclassman. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. One thing that's super underrated about Savion is he's great in pass pro too. So just check. He checks all the boxes. There's a reason he's a 5-star. There's a reason he's the number one running back in the country. So I'm really interested to see how things go with Savion this weekend and through his recruitment. He's obviously a guy, that I've seen many times and have gotten close to those around him. So I'm excited for the Savion Hyder recruitment. But, just to give Michigan fans some optimism, I do think Michigan can win this recruitment, and we should know a lot more here in a couple of weeks. Ethan, anything you want to add on Savion?
I mean, this is the most anticipated official visit of the year. It's exciting stuff, man. Just like you said, Michigan has done a great job in this recruitment, and now it's just about finishing and pitching him and making him feel comfortable in Ann Arbor, like you said. I think things, like you said, are lining up well, and now we get to see why they brought in Tony Alford. He's a great recruiter, and now we can see if he can finish this recruitment and land a game-changing running back and set up Michigan's ground attack for the future. It's exciting stuff. It'll be a fun weekend.
All right, guys. So that is our official visit show. For more on this big weekend, make sure to head over to thewolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months. Get exclusive insider information on everything Michigan recruiting. And also make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And even though this was a massive preview, a little bit of a longer show than we're used to having here, I think that next weekend could be even bigger. It's Victor's weekend. So make sure to keep us or keep locked in here on the Wolverine YouTube channel. Like this video, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next weekend.